Welcome to this community conversation. It's the second one that's been done, the second round that's been done virtually, and we are leading the way in being the first one to look at this specific issue of policing as a form of community engagement. My name is Simon Coupland, as you can see from the screen, and I am the Vicar of St Richard's in Ham, in St Richard's Square, the modern building by the shops there, and I've been there 2 years. But the reason I'm chairing tonight particularly is that I am chair of the local neighbourhood forum, and so as such I'm interested in, concerned about our neighbourhood, our area, and particularly the neighbourhood forum is concerned with how we develop that. So I'm your host for the evening. I'll just set out a few explanations and introductions and ground rules as we start. So as you can, well, it's difficult to see from your screen because everyone's got very tiny, haven't they? But to introduce you to your ward councillors, they will introduce themselves in a moment or two. Councillor Penny Frost and Andre Fries and Gareth Richards. And then we also have Siobhan Octay, who's from the community engagement team at Richmond Borough. And then we are also especially grateful this evening to the Richmond Neighbourhood Inspector, Rebecca Robinson, and PCSO Alex Molnar, who are joining us tonight from the police force to share a little on their views on the current situation regarding policing in our area, but also answer any questions that you may have and respond to any matters you want to raise. So that's who we are. The outline of the evening is that after the ward councillors give us a very brief ward update. Oh, sorry, and I've missed one other I want to introduce, and that's Sir David Williams, our local police liaison group representative. He will also give a short introduction as to that organisation, its role. Then the police will give an introduction about key news from the local area, and then we'll get on to questions and discussion. We'll finish at 8 o'clock prompt if we haven't finished before that. I need to emphasize that this whole event is being recorded, and afterwards it will go up, be uploaded onto the council website. You can actually see the last round on their website already. So remember that if you're going to say anything or be seen on screen. And I know you've been sent the guidelines as to what we can and can't do. We can't talk about politics this evening. This is not a political evening, it's a community conversation. And also we're going to be polite to one another, even if we disagree with what somebody else says. If you want to ask a question, and we do, the whole purpose of the evening is to have an opportunity for conversation, for engagement, then use the chat function. If you go to the bottom of your screen, there should be a little button that says chat, and you can put a message in and thereby signal that you want to say something. Now, don't write the whole question or you'll fill up everyone's screen. The thing to do is just write question and then what your question is about. So if it's about graffiti, question about graffiti. If it's about COVID, question, read COVID. And just to flag that up. When a question is raised, I mean, I have no particular desire that we should talk about graffiti, but that's an example. So if a question on graffiti is raised, and you want to pile in and say, yes, I've got a comment about that, or I've got an observation, then during the discussion, you also have this at the bottom of your screen, you should have a little hand button. So you can raise your hand and say, I want to add to that discussion. That way we don't change topics from one to another over time. I think that is probably enough to say now by way of introduction. So I will hand over to our ward councillors. We haven't agreed an order, so I'll leave the three of you to sort out who's going first, second and third.
Andre, do you want to go first?
Okay, I'll jump in. Yeah, we're going out. Should we go in alphabetical order then? That's probably easiest by surname. Right, so as you can all see and read, my name's Andre Fries. So a few things just to update you on. Couple of things around sort of traffic measures in terms of improving safety and reducing air pollution around schools. The Russell School is going to be having a school street launched within the next few weeks. I don't know the specific date for that. Maybe Gareth can remind us, but that's happening in the next few weeks. If you've got more questions, we can, if you want more explanation about that, we can talk about that a bit later. We also put in a bid to TfL for similar measures around Grey Court, because they now have something like 500 pupils cycling to school every day, and we're waiting to hear on whether we've had that funding come back, or we don't know yet or not. In terms, sticking with funding, we did not get the funding for a bridge between Ham and Twickenham, which I was not particularly surprised about. So that's another one that can rest for another day. And then the third thing I wanted to update was that finally, after much pushing from the ward councillors, we are actually going to get some electric vehicle chargers in our ward, and we're getting 2 put into Lammas Road, 1 into Meadlands Drive, and 1 onto Clifford Road. You can go online and request more. If you go onto the council website and put in electrical vehicle charging points, there is a request form to do that. But if you do desperately need to charge your car on the 8th this week, which is Thursday, it is National Clean Air Day, and all the car chargers in the borough are free for that day. So you might have to nip outside of our ward, but at least you won't have to pay for your charging when you do so. And finally, the Ham and Petersham Neighbourhood Forum has set up a meeting with Richmond Parks to discuss their movement strategy and the car park charging that they're considering bringing in. And that's happening on Wednesday, 21st. Details of that are being pulled together at the moment, and we'll get around to everyone as soon as possible. Thank you.
Okay. Right. I'm Penny Frost, and I'm, as well as being a ward councillor, I'm also chair of the Education Children's Services Committee for the borough. And so part of my role there is to have oversight of all of the schools in the borough. And of course, this period that we're looking back on now is the period where they have been managing throughout the lockdown period, and then going back to full opening in September. And I think it's worth recording how very well our schools have done right across the borough, particularly, of course, in Ham and Petersham, because our schools are absolutely super. Our 3 local primaries and our secondary. All the teachers and the staff have worked very hard to make sure that the schools are all safe for the children to return. They're coping. They all have a protocol to follow if they have a child who is suspected of having COVID symptoms, or a teacher or another member of staff, and if anybody has positive test. So they're very clear about the protocol they have to follow. They've got a direct helpline to the DFE, which has been supported by Public Health England. So they're getting the best possible support that they can do with that. And I think you will agree that they have done very, very well. And also our numbers returning, and this is the children right across the board, including children with special needs, has been very high compared with the national. So that is something that we're very pleased with, because I think schools, it's so important for children to be back in school and getting their education. And I think probably I'll leave that there. Thank you. Gareth.
Hi, well, I've got 2 children at, well, I'll just say that I've got, echo your points there, and I've got 2 children at Midlands, and I've been quite impressed with the way that they're dealing with the whole situation and doing their best to stop cross infection of children at Midlands. I think we also all need to do our bit and continue to wear masks. I think, and I've been guilty about this on a couple of occasions too. You know, you should be wearing your masks around the school area to reduce the spread of COVID. Other things I've been doing, Grey Courts have bumped into a problem in that they've got 500 bikes, children going to school, but that also means there are sort of several hundred ways in which a bike can go wrong, and they wonder if they would quite like us to install a bike fixing place. And we think maybe a good place for that would be Ham Parade, so that everyone could use it and not just Grey Court children. I've also asked the council, although we didn't get a bridge, it would be nice to keep the one that we've got, Teddington Lock Bridge, in good repair. So I've asked the council to try and expedite the repairs to that bridge, given that its condition is well, hopefully okay, but like anything old, it could do with fixing. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And all within time, so congratulations, well done. Not always the case with politicians, so I'm impressed. We pass on then to David, the chair of the Police Liaison Group. Would you like to tell us a little more about that in the next few minutes?
Right. First of all, a bit of history in Ham and Petersham about policing. In the late 90s and the beginning of the 2000s, we had only reactive policing from Twickenham when something was reported or went wrong, and about one PC half time, and there were problems, serious problems. The Safer Neighbourhood team was set up with an inspector, 2 PCs and 3 PCSOs in, I think, 2003, and policing transformed around here, basically because most of the minor crime was committed by youths who, when the police after a few weeks got descriptions of them, they knew who they were, went round to see them, told them off, let the parents loose on them after that. And the amount of crime we had dropped remarkably because the delinquents knew that they would be caught. We've only got half the staffing in the ward now that we had because of police cuts over the last decade, but it's a hell of a lot better than it was at the beginning of the century. And we don't have a big crime problem in Ham and Petersham. We have on several occasions been the safest borough in London. The first time happened when I was the councillor responsible for community safety, but I'm not trying to claim the credit for that. Only a little bit of it anyway. And the Police Liaison Group was set up when the Safer Neighbourhood team was set up around 2003, although the Ham and Petersham Association had been having community safety meetings for some years before that. These meetings are quarterly. We haven't had one because of the pandemic since March, but a newsletter has gone out actually by coincidence today. And if anybody wants a copy of that newsletter, a 3-page newsletter with a questionnaire on the end from the local sergeant, the council have got the email contact for the Police Liaison Group, which please, if you could put that on the bottom of the screen at some time during the meeting or afterwards, convey it to everybody, that would be very helpful. And I will ensure that anybody that wants one gets the latest newsletter. So just last of all, 2 things that you should understand about crime, and the crime statistics is the first one. The number of drug cases, drug arrests has gone up significantly from last year, but this doesn't mean there is more drug crime. It's just that it means more arrests. And there are crimes that are underreported, like racist behavior. And the fact that we get that doubling doesn't necessarily mean that the problem's got worse. It means that we've got much better at tackling it. So a word of warning about crime numbers. The only time we've had any serious problems in the ward, last point, was about 2 years ago when we had a big problem with break-ins and cars being stolen, usually with keys that the person who'd broken in had stolen. And we got 50 people at the Police Liaison Group meeting, but they were very valuable. The police were able to reassure everybody that this was under control. It helped that the villains had been caught as well by that time. So I would welcome anybody that's interested in community safety and crime locally to please come to the quarterly police liaison group meetings when we can get them started again, which probably will not be till next year, but they're quarterly. And if you want the newsletter or are interested in that, please use the email that I've given the council, Ham and Petersham, PLG, all one word, at gmail.com. Ham and Petersham, PLG at gmail.com. So if you haven't written that down, the council will circulate it. So thank you, Simon.
Thank you. So you're not going to meet remotely. You're not going to meet on Zoom.
We haven't thought that was worthwhile at the moment, but it depends on how long we're going to be unable to have real meetings. The sergeant and I will consider this in a month or two and see where we are and keep it under review. Thank you.
So I am going to hand over now to Inspector Robinson to give us an introduction to the themes of the evening of policing in our area.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'll keep it fairly brief because obviously the point for me on being here is to hear from you. So I want you guys to have as much time as possible to ask the questions that you want to ask. As David already alluded to, it's policing's changed very, very much, even since the inception of Safer Neighbourhoods. So I'm the inspector for all the Safer Neighbourhood teams now across Richmond. So I've got responsibility for all the 18 wards. That falls into 5 clusters run by 5 sergeants, and then the teams below them. And each ward now has 2 PCs and 1 PCSO. So we are spread very thinly. I'm looking to do what I can in terms of boosting that presence with using special constables and our new recruits alongside the officers that we've already got. Because I feel quite strongly about having officers, you know, out on the street as much as possible. So just a very sort of quick picture of Richmond as a whole, and then I'll bring in Alex, who's one of your local DWOs, who will have much more of a knowledge on your specific area. So we did, in general, crime did take a dip along with the rest of London. Over COVID, we have seen that sort of start to rise again, albeit it went down a little bit in August from July, and that's very much sort of in line with the rest of London. Richmond does remain one of the safest boroughs in London. However, that doesn't mean, and this will be weekly, I'm very passionate about Richmond, and this will be weekly conversations that I had over the summer in resourcing meetings, that it's not important that we police it, and that you shouldn't get any less of a service really from us. Realistically, a lot of the resources, if something that we saw sort of some big disorder events happen in Lambeth, for example, over the summer, where we will lose resources, we are part of a Southwest command unit, so we are partnered with Wimbledon, Wandsworth and Kingston. So often we may see, you know, in our meetings around resources, that those resources will be put over to the Wandsworth way if they've had more violent crime. However, that's why I sort of look at using specials, look at other ways that we can combat the issues that are important to you. So that's really why I kind of wanted to be on this call. In terms of COVID, because I'm sure that will come up, because that's understandably a concern for everyone. The policing response is very much to engage with people in the first instance if they're not wearing the masks, and all of my officers will challenge people not wearing masks. Obviously there are those exceptions, but we will be looking to challenge them. We have COVID, we name them COVID cars, that are cars specifically attached to response team in terms of dealing with calls to larger groups of 6 and more. And the Safer Neighbourhood teams as well do respond to specific areas of concerns, albeit obviously There is only 3 of them to cover a large area, but they will also do what they can around that. So that's I've probably gone on long enough. If I could just bring in Alex just to give like a little more of a local view, and then sort of save the time for questions or anything that anyone wants to ask, instead of me whittering on. Alex, are you?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, great. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Marn, for passing it over to me. I'm in the absence of PLG meetings, I thought I'd just do a little bit of sort of our crime statistics that we usually present at our meetings. It basically it reflects the last 3 months, be it this table actually starts on August, and then we compare it with the same crime stats from the same 3 months of the previous year. So it's kind of an indication of, you know, are we rising, are we falling? Obviously, we're in unprecedented times at the moment with COVID. So you tend to see some of the figures be quite different. I was hoping to share this with you guys. However, it was a last minute thought, and we're not able to facilitate that. So I'm just going to sort of go through a couple of the main ones, sort of burglary, theft of motor vehicle, and theft from motor vehicle. So, I mean, we've got August, July and June's figures here. So for burglary residential, which is just the home side of things, for August we had 6, and July we had 4, and June we had 9. Previous year in 2019, August we had 6, so it's the same. July we had 2, and June we had 4. So the figures thereabouts are, you know, roughly the same. I will say when lockdown initially started back in March, we did see a massive drop in burglary. The simple reason for that being is obviously everyone was in lockdown, everyone was at home constantly. So it doesn't really make it easier for burglars to do their chosen profession. Things like theft of motor vehicle was relatively low in the last few months. August we had 2, July we had 2, and June we had 0. Those figures are actually identical to the previous year, so I guess maybe a good thing. But theft from motor vehicle, we had a huge spike in June where we had 13 theft from motor vehicle compared to the previous year where we only had 1. July and August saw 7 and 0. Previous year was 3 and 1, so a little bit of an increase there. Just in terms of what's going on in Ham in general, things have been quite busy. For us personally, we've had quite a large neighbour dispute going on. It's quite frankly dominated our time. It's extremely high profile and quite volatile. So we've been trying to deal with that the best we can. Obviously, I think a lot of people will be aware of what was going on down at Teddington Lock, certainly sort of June, July, August, where we had droves of kids down there having the time of their lives, but also jumping from the bridge, which is quite dangerous. We worked quite closely with other safer neighbourhood teams, particularly Teddington, S&T, and also the Environments Agency in a bid to try and prevent this from happening again. The Environments Agency actually resorted to closing off the entire Middle Island as it's 100% their land. So they actually completely closed that off and fenced it off. Anybody found on the island from that point would be classed as trespass. That kind of ended it. I'm scared that it's going to happen next year. I'm sure it will. It always has, but this year has been particularly. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
you're back now.
You're back.
Yes. I disappeared, did I?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, just in terms of little stuff that's been going on in Ham, graffiti is still popping up here and there. Unfortunately, we're no closer into finding who's responsible. These things, you know, happen in the dead of the night. It's usually 1 or 2 people. We've got no lines of inquiry because the schools are closed. Usually we'll be seeking advice from them and seeing if it's any of their students. But yeah, it's it's a tough one for the graffiti. Like my inspector said, COVID patrols. We've been doing some Intel sort of led patrols. I know Councillor Freese has emailed me about certain areas in Ham, particularly like River Lane, where there's been some youths groups, young adults, breaking the COVID regs by quite a bit. Unfortunately, we haven't had any success with that. Every time we go down there, there's no one there, which is, it's odds law. But yeah, that is something that we're actively trying to continue to do. That's it.
Thank you, Alex.
So we are now opening up for questions. If I can remind you, it'd be very helpful if instead of writing your entire question, you'd write question and then the topic. So if your question is about swimming in the Thames, write question swimming. If you want to ask about Ham Lands or community policing on next door, just write question, and then other people who are interested in that can also put the same sort of question in. When we're discussing the question, or when the question is being answered, and of course we're very open to councillors and police officers both contributing to that, then if you want to have your say in that as well, then use the hand button at the bottom and say, yes, I want to join in that discussion as well. And that way we can stay focused on the same topic rather than going backwards and forwards. So I can see that we have, I'm not sure if it's the same person or yes, it is the same. So swimming in the Thames, Backroom Angels, would you like to unmute Tina Bucklow to ask her question?
Hi.
Tina, you are live.
I hope you can hear me all right. It's just a brief question, which is, what's the law regarding outdoor swimming or wild swimming in the Thames? Albeit there are given obviously risks to doing so, but I wonder what the legislation around it was. That's it.
Can anyone answer that?
I could attempt to answer it. I'm not a police officer though, so but it's as far as I'm aware, it's actually swimming in the Thames is fine. But I think there's the laws, or rather bylaws, that belong to Environment Agency that prevent you from being able to jump off certain areas into the Thames.
Yeah.
If you're inquiring about what happened with the youths on the lock, we were pretty much going from a safety point of view and a welfare point of view. If people were swimming in the non-tidal side of the Thames, minding their own business, and it's not really an issue for us. But the fact that they were drinking, walking on private land and people's boats, and jumping into the tidal side of the Thames, which is really so much worse, while being inebriated, then obviously accidents can happen, and they have happened over the years. So when we were dealing with the lock, it was kind of safety and the welfare of the children, rather than actually like breaking a law of swimming in the river.
I would just sort of reiterate that. Obviously, our concerns from a policing point of view is the safety of these kids that are jumping in the Thames, and that's absolutely why we need to be dealing with it, and why we've been working with the council a long time. And I wouldn't want you to think that we've forgotten about that now that the weather's gone down. So we're working on sort of a long-term solution and designing out around the bridge, along with the fire service and our council partners, about how we address that, because the last thing I want is for there to be a serious injury, of a tragic injury of a kid losing their life on the lock.
There are two other points as well, in that the water in the Thames is not sensible to swim in because it's polluted. No. And Weil's disease is the most common risk that's mentioned, which is from rats. but kids jumping off Teddington Lock Bridge might be jumping into the water on top of a submerged trolley, which get dumped occasionally, or even worse. So there's no, it's not like a swimming pool. There could be all sorts of dangerous things quite close to the surface there. So it really has got to be stopped.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And yeah, we're working alongside the fire service because they've got a water safety forum around that as well. Because yeah, they're of the same opinion. At the end of the day, we don't want to see someone lose their life. And also, you know, I've got a responsibility not just for the residents of Richmond, but for the police. And God forbid it's, you know, one of my officers that's going to have to be dealing with that. So we absolutely, I'm with you on that.
Okay, thank you very much. Ellie, could we unmute Christina Rife, who wants to ask a question? If you stick to one, first of all, Christina.
Okay. Hiya. So I have a question about the from what I gather, quite well established cruising area in Ham Lands. As a dog walker, I very frequently find myself in that area of Ham Lands, and it's becoming clearer that it's no longer staying just in the bushes. It's now moving out of the bushes into the quiet open area of the particular area of Ham Lands. So frequently there have been sightings of, you know, just plain nudity and or worse active happenings. I believe there's a frequent person on a bicycle that frequently goes nude down that area as well. And so seeing that this is kind of escalating a little bit, what used to be in the bushes is now coming out into the open. Is there anything being done or looked at by the councillors or the police, I suppose?
We have tried to, I mean, I've worked in Ham for a long time, 8-9 years, I think it is now. So I'm fully aware of the concerns that residents have down in Ham Lands. It has been something that we've tried to address on several occasions. Unfortunately, we always kind of hit a wall when we're working with the council. And the last time that we actually tried to do this, I believe was last year, the council actually said that they were going to effectively take it on and work on it. We haven't really been kept in the loop since. So I think probably the answer would be to speak to the council more than us.
Would any of the councillors like to comment?
Yeah, I'll come into that. It's a policing issue. I'm sorry, this is something that we have had over many years. You're quite right. The council is not in a position to police areas which the police have not taken any action over a long period of time. And we know that the area has been recognised, it's been publicised in magazines and so forth as being an area for gay men to work in and to meet. And it's very hard to know how to manage that. If it is, if there are instances where the public nudity is sort of becoming something which is very obvious for local walkers, then they must contact the police. We've got Park Guard who do regularly patrol the area, but Park Guard is a very tiny team of people who have an awful lot. I think we've got 51 open spaces in the borough, and we're not in a position to be able to respond to this in the way that members of the public would like us to. We just don't have those powers.
Okay.
I mean, sorry, if I can follow up on this, like I'm
Yes.
not quite sure my question got, you know, I don't feel like a satisfactory answer because it feels like a ping pong ball thrown between the police and the councillors back and forth. And to be fair, my concern is less about the activities that are established in the bushes. I know some people are objecting to that. I don't even object to those ones anymore. I'm objecting to what is clearly now public nudity, and that is, from what I understand, still an offense. So, you know, that is a policing issue. Somebody should go in there when the weather is nice and just issue tickets if you're not wearing clothes. I mean, as simple as that.
Yeah.
I think, Christina, sorry, this is probably something that I will have to sort of take away and discuss with the ward sergeant around. I don't know if there's been any. Sorry, I probably should have explained when I started. I'm still quite new to this role. Sort of joint problem solving with the council, because you're quite right. It's a policing issue, but however, we do unfortunately have very sort of limited resources. So perhaps this is something that we could. I could come back on. Is there? I think there's mechanisms, isn't there, Siobhan, for feeding back afterwards.
Thank you. And I also heard Councillor Frost saying that the important thing, I think it was Councillor Frost, report it when it happens as well. But it has obviously been logged.
But what do we report? Do we call 111 or do we call 999? I mean, it's not an emergency.
I would advise, if you're actually walking down in Hamlands and you see something, you know, absolutely call 101 or 999, depending on the severity of it. I always encourage the dog walking community, because these are the ones I usually speak to them about it, to report it to police. But previously, what I found that actually happens is amongst the professional dog walking community, that there's a WhatsApp group with, you know, possibly 100 members in it, and rather than actually reporting it to police, they just tell themselves, and someone will say report it to the police, but it never gets done. Yeah. So actually having to actually see the evidence of you know, what goes on down there on paper, on our statistics, it's actually very low. A lot of it goes unreported, and it is very important to report stuff, because if we don't report it, the police don't know.
Absolutely. And as well, you know, don't be afraid to sort of use that 999 number if it is happening right in front of you, because it's so much easier for us to sort of come and deal with it, you know, as it's happening. Yeah, if possible. But yeah, definitely report it. Please, definitely.
Okay.
Is that better, Christina?
It is. I mean, you know, I'm not sure I would feel comfortable calling 999, you know, for public nudity.
People call it for a lot less, and yeah, I'll be honest with you, like, yeah.
Right. Can we, I'll come back to you on the other. Can we go to Ian Bowden with your question? If you can be unmuted, please.
There we go. Is that, am I through?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. In Ham and Petersham, we're fortunate to have pedestrian ways within the borough. And at night, these are very dark and gloomy. I'd just like to get the police opinion on whether they would support the idea of solar-powered lighting to be installed by the council to reduce the opportunity for crime, to reduce the feeling of trepidation that one has going down a dark passage at night.
I mean, I would always recommend better lighting in any area that is dark. Obviously, we can't directly influence the council to do our you know, what we want them to do. It's more than just a recommendation, but certainly if there is a budget for lighting, then yeah, I would implore that they add it to certain areas in Ham.
Could any of the councillors express an opinion?
Yeah, I'd agree with you, Ian, that some of our alleyways in Ham are neglected and could do with a bit of lighting, probably a bit of tidying up of the footway, and on some of them cutting back vegetation on the side. And it would be nice to if we could bid for a pot of money that would let us do that.
The other thing is, just to jump in, if that's all right, Gareth, is that some of the alleyways are actually on RHP land, so a Richmond Housing Partnership. So that would be an issue for them in terms of lighting, and I've certainly been in touch with them in the past about clearing up litter and dumped rubbish and cutting back vegetation on them. But there is an issue of ownership. So I think an assessment, possibly an assessment, it would be useful if people could give us a view, send us suggestions for which alleyways. So Ian, if you could have a particular suggestion for alleyways that you're particularly talking about, then we can look at those, and then we can decide, research whether that's RHP or council land. But that is something we can certainly look into.
Yeah, it's something we have been discussing as councillors. We're very aware of it, and I'm very impressed with some of the solar powered lighting that you can get now. It's quite cheap. It's movement sensitive and very effective. And we've got some in our garage blocks around where I live, and they have stopped the loitering with intent very speedily. So I think that would be a very good idea. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We'll follow that one up.
Great. Julia Bailey, would it be possible to put your camera on? Is that possible, so we can see you to ask your question? And then you'll get unmuted. Oh,
there you are.
Great, and you'll get unmuted as well. So please do ask your question.
So my question, I live in Petersham near the Bend and near Petersham Nurseries, near Petersham Gate. And we frequently have bicycles that look like they're dumped on the pavements. The pavements are incredibly narrow. We've got a blind lady who lives around the corner, and it's often on her access to the bus stop. We've got young families with prams. We've got quite a lot of elderly. Is there a regulation again to manage these bikes, that they have to move them on within a certain period of time? Sometimes they can be there 2 days, 3 days. And what can we do about that?
So I can respond to that if you like. They should have, if they are from these the companies which hire them out, they should have a number, a phone number for the company, which is written on the frame of the bike. And I'm unfortunate, it's a case of give them a ring and say, here it is, come and collect it, and they should do that straight away.
I've also resorted to tweeting the company in the past with a picture of their bike and the location. Yeah. It is a problem. I mean, I think that's the issue with dockless bikes generally, unfortunately. And that's, I mean, the council did trial having a dockless bike system. The previous administration brought it in, and it quickly came to an end because of part of this being the issue of them being dumped everywhere. Unfortunately, it is an issue with users who are less than thoughtful about where they leave their bikes. I don't know if there's anything the police can do about it. I presume there's not a great deal. I mean, if I see them, I will often take a picture, and I'll end up just moving the bike as well. The other thing is just move it to somewhere that's safer. Unfortunately, it just requires, from that point of view, we all have to take a bit of responsibility on ourselves when we see something we don't like picking up litter, I guess, which one is often doing, unfortunately. Moving bikes on that shouldn't be left where they are.
Gareth, did you want to say something?
Yeah, the last dockless bike scheme we had in Richmond failed because it wasn't making any money.
Right. Yeah.
I suspect the Uber one will go the same way, but Uber have rather large pockets compared to a lot of other companies, so it could be here for a while. Yeah, I think on the first instance, sort of complain to Uber, and if it becomes a nuisance, then we can get the council officers to remove them and get Uber to pay for the removal costs.
Maybe we have a pound or something where we put them all into a pound and they have to pay for them to get them out. But
yeah, it's called Tenant and Police Station.
First arrived in this borough to get them to negotiate, so that only a single provider could work here under our guidelines, rather than what's happening now is just the providers are just coming in without any sort of guidance from us.
So Alex, are you saying, and perhaps you need your boss to say something, but is it an offence to leave a bike on a?
No, I mean it's. Oh, sorry, Mum.
I mean, they probably are, to be honest, some sort of obstruction highway offences. But I guess I've just kind of got to be realistic in the, you know, officer numbers and priorities and stuff, and just the time really of the officers to deal with it. I've just got to be realistic about that.
I think one of the problems we have with these bike schemes are, whether it's Ola or Mobike or the new Uber ones, is it is within their policy, their terms and their conditions for the user to leave the bike anywhere. That's the beauty of it. Pick a bike up, take it to where you want to go, and just leave it. We can't be taking every bike. We won't get any other work done. And the bikes that we have in the yard now, they're usually ones that have been totally abandoned and destroyed by, you know, vandalism, or they've been stolen in the first place.
Thank you, Christina. Can we unmute Christina? Yeah.
Hi there. So what I found out, because my nephew actually takes these bikes, is that apparently one of those bikes, I believe it's the red ones, they actually stop working at exactly that point that you're describing, Julie. So they have a range to which you can take them, and at a certain point they are outside the range, and it happens to be exactly that bend at the Petersham road. So I think, and that obviously then means that anybody that's going into Ham basically stops right there and has no option but to dump them. So one suggestion would be is that maybe the council can talk to the providers and see if that range can be expanded. So it's in an area that is more suitable for actually stopping and stopping that area and dumping them.
Okay, councillors.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly take that back to the council and ask about that. I hadn't realised that was. I mean, I know that there are mechanisms where bikes can be stopped from going into particular areas. I didn't realise that they had an automatic cat out when they get to Petersham. That's quite interesting. And so we can look at that, and we can ask to get some sort of change on that. But basically, it's a responsibility of the companies to get their bikes moved. They are often not doing so, maybe because they don't know about them. I don't know, but they are. The trouble with the bikes is that they themselves, once they've been hired out a few times, they're not really worth anything very much to the companies. So it's neither here nor there for them. It's to kind of leave them where they rest, and that's another problem relating to these hire bikes.
So coming back to you, Julia, I'm not sure if you'd be happy with all that, but do you at least feel that your issue has been heard and taken seriously and all possible response has been given?
Well, I think it's probably news to most of us on this call that they possibly have a cutoff, which is at Petersham, which might be why they are accumulating there. So it's it's something that maybe the council need to take forward with other councils and manage it centrally, because as individuals and the local police force, I'm not sure we can do anything about it. I certainly take Andre's point about moving it aside and doing that. But yes, I think that something needs to be done, or if they just go bankrupt and they suddenly just get replaced by somebody else, perhaps understanding where their cutoffs are would be really useful.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll take that forward, as Penny said.
Then we have
Peter wanted to cut in on this.
Right.
Peter had his hand up. Yeah.
Peter.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sorry, my name is Peter Barrow-Smith. I'm here this evening, but I'm with the Safer Neighbourhood Board Executive, which is the umbrella body for all the PLGs. So I'm just sort of listening in. I'm not aware of where exactly these are being dropped, but I'm also very much involved with the Royal Parks, Richmond Park, and as far as I am aware, I stand corrected, those bikes are illegal in the Royal Parks. So they cycle up to the park and then they dump them outside. Now, I don't know whether this is near a gate. We have exactly the same in Sheen, just outside Sheen Gate. We can get about 6 left there. So it might be just purely the restriction is in the Royal Parks. I'll leave that with you. That's just something I know of. Thank you.
One does wonder how they then get home again.
You may well ask. You may well ask. They've got to come back and hope it's still there.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So Christina seems to be the only other question that is still remaining outstanding on policing on next door. So if we can go back to Christina Rife again.
Sorry, quite active tonight, clearly. So my second question really is around there's an active community policing presence on next door that, you know, in the last couple of days or weeks, you know, has caused a little bit of a stir on some of the posts that they've been making. And I think there was one particular one that the community, the majority of the community, I should say, felt quite strongly was inappropriately naming and shaming an individual that was, you know, an alcoholic, and, you know, and it was very flippant. A post, sorry?
Sorry, was that from the police, was it, Christina?
It was from like the community policing, Dave something, I think is the...
David Hayward.
That's our media team.
Yeah. And it just seems that these are, you know, clearly intending to be quite engaging, quite humorous, but they came across as very flippant. There was quite a large discussion until that was cut off because it actually went a little bit hayward. And so I just wanted to raise a little bit that issue on the standards that need to be applied on social media, and, you know, sort of treating crimes and also the criminals that themselves might be victims of other issues, you know, with respect.
Yeah. No, thank you for raising that. Do you remember what day that was, Christina? Just so I can.
I can't, but I can look it up on my phone and I'll get back to you. I think the title was quite memorable. It was like 6 o'clock gin at 1930 or something, I think it was called. But let me look it up. And
if you find it and can put it in the chat section, then that'll be recorded.
Yeah, if not, I'll go back. I'm sure I'll be able to find it, because I like to go on next door like myself as well. So just to sort of see what's going on. So yeah, I'll take that up and have a look.
I mean, yeah, without sort of like finger pointing, I know that the intention is good and we're all very happy that the police is actively on there. And, you know, I myself am guilty as well, that sometimes on social media, you don't come across as, you know, in the manner that you thought it was. But there was quite a lot of feedback on that from the community saying it's not okay.
I shall have a look. And another thing, actually, maybe while we're on the subject, that would just kind of be really helpful for us. I think Alex sort of touched on it earlier. If there is a crime, because sometimes we will, the first time we actually hear about these things is on next door, and it's just really helpful if it sort of comes into us, you know, as soon as possible, as opposed to going through next door, because then what happens is people comment on it, and we've had it, like, you know, a couple of months ago, I think, where what was actually was a fight. By the time I got into work, I was being told there was some sort of major incident and someone that had been stabbed, and I was like, what? How did I miss this? But yeah, so yeah, if we could sort of encourage a wider communities, if there is any policing issues, to report them in through the correct channels, that would just be super helpful.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll look into that specific one.
And then Andrew B, if we can unmute Andrew B, a question on road safety. Okay, Ellie?
That's all right.
Yeah.
I think I had to do something at my end.
Right.
Thanks. I think this is within the scope of the conversation, given that we talked about bikes and we've got the police here. We had a fairly disturbing and major incident at the end of Martingale's Close, north side of Ham Common, where a cyclist was knocked off his bike by somebody overrunning the junction. We hope that he's all right. We don't know for sure. And then following week, there was another close call. And I think, you know, this is a recurrent feature. And there's been conversations about remodeling that junction because it is repeated. You know, it's a dangerous junction. It's a miracle that somebody hasn't got severely injured before. And we've then heard various stories, or I've certainly picked up various stories about the cycle route, which may or may not be installed across the north side of Ham Common in conjunction with a remodeling of that junction. So I suppose my question is rather specific in terms of the end of the road I live on, but on the other hand, also has a more general interest as to what is happening about that east-west cycle route through Ham, going through into the park.
Well, yeah, I suppose I should pick that one up. About 2 years ago, we agreed with TfL that we would build a quiet way from Teddington to Wandsworth, and they started building that. They built the bit that covers Dukes Avenue, and they built a bit in Hardwick Road, and then they kind of stopped. And we've heard various sort of rumours as to whether or not they're going to start again. And this is all required. This is funding from TfL, and TfL used to give us sort of quite good funding to do this, but now they're getting hooked on doing sort of cheap solutions to things like sticking wands in the road to make cycle lanes, which is all very good, but probably you wouldn't like. Some people would not like the aesthetics of just solving that junction by sticking wands and cones in there.
Well, it wouldn't solve the problem anyway, because the problem is it's a very odd junction in the way three roads merge into one with double white lines.
The suggestion that the suggestion was to get rid of the three-way junction and just have two junctions that have rather tight turns to get into a modern junction is not to have a flowing curve, is to have a sort of tight curve to force cars to slow down at junctions.
So is that now in plan or not? Because there seem to be two messages coming out as to whether it was planned.
I got a message saying from the officer in charge saying it was going to happen in September and October, and it hasn't happened yet. So I'll get back to her and see if
I think there's a little loop to go through about consultation, because I think there was a broad acceptance of the kind of framework of the plan, but I think the fine detail of it needed to be tuned a little bit. Basically, it looked to be going in the right direction, but needed a bit of tuning, I think.
Yeah.
Okay,
thanks. Get back, that would be great.
Thank you. Julia Bailey again, talk to us about River Lane.
You're on. She's muted.
Are you muted? Julia, we can't. You're unmuted.
So I might as well, whilst we're talking local, I wouldn't say a crime's been committed, but I'm just conscious that if you walk along the towpath to come down River Lane, and as the evenings draw in, it can be earlier and earlier, that there are cars parked down there, people sitting in the cars. If you turn into River Lane to come towards Petersham, their lights may come on, they will move towards you, they will wind their window down, and they will say good evening to you. And if you carry on walking, they don't turn around and drive out of River Lane. They obviously drive back to their original position and wait for the next person to come along. So it's quite intimidating, and it's nice to have somebody else with you. But if you're a single person, it would be very intimidating. So it'd be useful for, if we've got any local constabulary able to walk down there occasionally, just make them feel a bit unsettled so that they can't assume that they are in a dark, quiet place, that they can do that. And it can be quite early. I've gone down there and it's been 6 o'clock in the evening. So it is time, sociable times for family people, not just unsociable times, 10:30 and afterwards. So it's more of an awareness.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, thanks for letting us know. I mean, River Lane has been a place of interest for us, you know, since the dawn of time. Stuff is always going on down there. Myself and my colleague, we always visit it at least twice in a shift. I did touch upon it earlier. Councillor Freese did mention that there were some going-ons down there. I think she was contacted by a local resident with concerns. We did follow that up. Unfortunately, we haven't found anything as interesting as that. But what I will say is we have recently done some partnership work with Sheen Safer Neighbourhoods and Mortlake and Barnes, where we've done some plainclothes operations. They had some issues going up towards the A316. So I will be speaking to our sergeant and seeing if they can return the favour to us one winter night, and perhaps we'll do the same down there, and you know, get these people coming up to us, which would be great. So yeah, we are aware of it. Wasn't aware of that precise weird situation, but you know, we will look into it.
Okay, thank you. That one was coming back from the cinema about 10 o'clock, but I've had it at 6 o'clock in the evening as well.
Okay, no problem. Cheers.
Thank you. Tina, again, the hand and flower. Can you make sure you're unmuted, and we'll unmute you as well? Yeah, you're live.
Yes, good. So I'm sure this is on people's radar, but it's just really what the status is around the hand and flower, and I'm conscious that there seems some antisocial behaviour around there, just inebriated people walking straight into the road. You know, have seen a van with the driver at the junction opposite the hand and flower, having an argument in the middle of the road with his mate who's standing in the middle of the road, trying to run him over. I mean, I know people were aware of it, and I guess that was reported. It's just, what is the situation with the hand and flower for the police and for the councillors?
I mean, from a policing point of view, hand and flower has only just recently come back up on our radar due to it being closed for so long. I have had a conversation with a resident from Duke's Avenue regarding some going on, particularly with the attitude of the door staff. Apparently they're quite forceful to getting people inside the premise. We've yet to really sort of tackle that, but we will do in the coming weeks, and we'll do some liaison with our licensing team regarding, you know, who the licensee is and, you know, what they are and aren't allowed to do, and if there's any conditions, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah. From a councillor perspective, I mean, I think we're all aware that, I mean, obviously comments on next door, emails about it from people, complaints about noise, and those kind of things. At the moment, I don't think there's anything concrete specifically that can be followed up. I think it seems to be there's sort of quite a lot of just low level bad behavior, for want of a better word, I think unfortunately we're in the kind of slightly difficult situation. We may need to wait for it to escalate, which is not good at all. But unless they actually break the law at the moment, we're in a slightly tricky situation. But I think from licensing, I think it's a good point that Alex made about following up with the licensing and checking on the restrictions. I think Penny, do you have more to add to that?
Well, really only from the point of view of the on the planning side, because I know for a long period of time people have been very, very concerned to see what was a lovely old building being, you know, sort of having a lot of damage done to it, and strange structures being erected, and the garden being sort of ripped apart. And we have had planning enforcement down there going over it in great detail, that building. And as Andre says, we are keeping a very close eye on it, and they have had to go back to make retrospective planning applications because of the things which they have been, the changes they've been making. At the moment, they are operating within the sort of the legal frameworks. I'm not sure specifically what their licensing is, what their licensing arrangements are at the moment. We can find that out and make sure that that those are appropriate. And if members of the public are making complaints about the way in which they're operating, and they feel that the licensing is not kind of helping the local area, then that can go back to licensing committee, and that can be looked at again, and that's quite a regular occurrence.
Yeah,
and something worth thinking about.
As far as I recall, their licensing is quite late. They're allowed to sell drinks up until midnight or 1 o'clock on Friday and Saturday night, as far as I recall. So I think that's something that we need to keep an eye on. And if they're not keeping to that, or if they're playing music too loudly, the best thing, I mean, as always, is for people to get in touch with us. If you don't tell us, I mean, I know the three of us do go on to Nextdoor and sort of keep an eye on stuff. I mean, it's a good source of information, but we can't get all of our information from there, and it is helpful if people have specific issues that they do email us directly, so we know, and then we can take it up with the right department.
Yeah, make sure that there's specific issues rather than just kind of general. Don't like what's going on. And if there are specific infringements or specific ways in which the activities of the Hand and Flower are causing a local nuisance, then those are the sort of things that we can take back to licensing committee. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, they may have a licensing requirement for not using the garden after a certain amount of time, like
after 10 o'clock at night or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, as someone's pointed out in the chat, obviously there is currently a 10 p.m. curfew, which, hey, I almost forgot we were living in abnormal times. But we can go back and check the licensing and make sure that when things are, if they ever return to normal one day, that they do abide by them. But thanks for bringing that one up, Tina.
I didn't realise Gareth Roberts was on the meeting. He's been keeping very quiet.
I was just thinking that, Councillor Richards, he has, hasn't he?
David Willis, could we actually see you to answer your question? Because that's just nice to be able to see you. Yeah, thank you. And now do put your question. You've been unmuted, so away you go.
Right, I was just going to ask what the situation is regarding cycling on pavements. Only I've noticed that has increased a lot. Now, it's obviously not a priority for the police, but I am a little bit concerned in as much as I've had some near misses of being sort of nearly knocked over or whatever. And I do think about, as I think Julia was mentioning earlier, sort of blind people and the people who don't see so well. What is the sort of situation with regards to sort of the liability of a cyclist if they're on the pavement? Because surely it's not right.
It's illegal.
Yes, I mean, from the policing point of view, we can we do stop and speak to people that are cycling on the pavement. Usually we will give them what we call the attitude test. Thankfully, 99% of people pass it flying colours. So it's just a bit of education and a word of warning. But certainly there are the 1% who fail it miserably, and yes, they are liable to receive a fixed penalty notice.
So there you go, simple as that.
Christina wants to jump in, I think, on cycling on pavements.
So there's an actual cycle path which is on the pavement running parallel to the Ham grounds, which really surprised me because I actually got into an argument because somebody near drove into me. And when I said, I don't understand why you're on the pavement, they went, this is where the cycle path is. And sure enough, there's an actual sign saying cycle path. Sure. You know where the entrance to the Hamlands is, where those two wood stumps are going? Yeah. That area is a dedicated cycle path.
It's a shared path, so it's not a dedicated cycle path, it's a shared path. So they don't have a right to tear down it. They should, cyclists should sort of treat it as a sort of be nice on it.
But why would that even be a shared path? Like, I mean, this is a residential area. This is a quiet road. there's really no reason to have cycles on the pavement in that area, because there's, what, 10 cars going down there an hour.
It's mainly for the children.
Unfortunately, the cars that drive down that around Riverside Drive tend to drive quite speedily, despite the new speed restrictions. That bike lane's that shared path is a legacy from some time ago. I don't know the history of that one.
So could that be looked at, that's not, you know, no longer shared? Because I think that's a good stretch of road that, you know, is maybe one of those areas where accidents happen. Like, I wasn't aware of that until I had an almost accident with a biker.
Can I come in at this? There is and always has been for decades, this shared path from Riverside Drive to Teddington Lock Footbridge. What I think the council might pursue is to separate the two. If there is an alternative place, you can put the cycle track. But up to now, and this has been the case for 40 years, the tarmac path from Riverside Drive down to Teddington Lock Footbridge has been a shared cycle pedestrian path. The cyclists should behave responsibly if they have to share a path with pedestrians, but the only possibility is to build a wider path with a separate cycle track, which there is a question mark over whether you should do that on public open space with Ham Lands. It's not as entirely straightforward, but I think the council or the councillors perhaps should ask about accidents or statistics or numbers. But I think part of the problem, and this is really reflecting the previous question about cycling on pavements, this year, since the lockdown, there have been a lot more people cycling. And therefore, there is a lot more potential for conflict where you have shared paths. And perhaps in the future, this is something that they need to change the priorities for.
Penny.
Yeah, Christina, I think you were not talking about the path leading down to Teddington Lock, were you? You were talking about the edge, the wide pavement on the edge of Ham Lands. Is that correct?
Yeah, the Riverside Drive pavement.
Yes, yeah. How that came about was in order to try and narrow the road a bit, because the road originally, when it was built originally, it was very, very wide. I understand, I don't know whether this is true, David will have this history, but it was intended to lead to a motor bridge across the river. But I mean, that, who knows? But because the road was so wide, it meant that it really was used as a speed track, and it was scary, because I remember those days. And so when there was some money from the Thames Landscape project, I think it was, part of the money was spent on making a shared path on the Ham Lands side of the road. Personally, I think it's quite a good idea, because many families will use that when they are cycling with children, and it keeps them off the road itself, and I think that's a good thing. And I like to see families who are using that path. I mean, it's very clearly demarcated, and I have to say, I've lived there for many, many years, and I use that path on a daily basis, and I haven't been aware of people finding it a problem. I mean, if there are a number of pedestrians on the road, then on the pathway, then it's easy enough to come off and go onto the road, as long as you're careful, obviously. But I don't, to be honest, I don't see that as being a problem. I wouldn't like to lose that shared path on that the edge of the road.
Can I just say, I think the pavement is wide enough on where it was widened on the Ham Lands side to have a ridge down the middle, so you could have a separate cycle track and footpath, which would be defined by some sort of ridge, something like that. That's not dangerous, but is a clear demarcation. That road was originally built in the early 70s when Waits wanted to build on the nearer to the river of another 50% bigger Waits estate. They built that road as a speculative loss leader to try and get planning permission to build on Ham lands, which didn't work. Duke's Avenue was built as wide as it is, the bit that's in Richmond, not the bit that's in Kingston, because until 1950 something, Surrey County Council wanted to have a road bridge across the river where Teddington Lock is. But that's why Duke's Avenue is ridiculously wide on the Richmond bit at the back of Maguire Drive. But that's enough of Anorak history, so I'll shut up.
Yes. I was just going to say, I think probably we should come to more contemporary issues. Michael Walker, are you still there? Ah, you are. Can we unmute Michael, or can he unmute himself?
I've unmuted myself.
Great.
I don't know whether, hello, brilliant meeting. This is fantastic. I don't know whether the councillors are aware of the sudden roadworks that appeared in Petersham and the impact of the fact that there seems to be no coordination between the traffic lights of the roadworks to 100 yards further up the actual traffic lights, and today it's pandemonium, and that impacts backwards along the travel line in the fact that I have a friend whose son is supposed to cycle to Christ School, and it's lethal out there. And this pushes it back to lighting. We could possibly cycle down the Ham Gate round to Ham House and go along the river, but now it's dark, you can't. And there doesn't seem to be any coordination or anybody doing anything about this there, because he can't go on the bus because it takes him an hour and a half to get through there. It took me an hour to get to the golf club, which is only 400, 500 yards. There is no coordination, and somebody really needs to take a look at how this works, because it spoils our area of where we live. Absolute spoils it.
I don't think it's council.
I don't know who it is, and I don't mind who it is, but I think somebody needs to look into why this happens, and there is no coordination. With 100 yards further, there is a set of traffic lights that go on red, and then you can't get through the roadworks, and it's impacting backwards and forwards, and we live in it. And then when you start talking about you can't go on a pavement with a bike, and you can't go down where it's dark, it doesn't work. And we go on the pavements because it's lethal, and there has to be a joint responsibility. It all impacts backwards. A joint responsibility on those pavements, because it will come in as we more of a cycle, that the pedestrians have to not have their headphones on, who don't hear you coming and you say, please excuse me, I'm going very, very slowly, but please help me because I cannot go on the roads. And going through Richmond Park, as somebody has said, you can't because it's closed and it's dark and there's no lighting. We're all on our bikes now going around here, but there is nobody going out there to get the cycle lanes to be safe and consistent across where we live. It's our only way is on a bus, and that roadwork area is roadworked all the time. Sorry to go on a bit, but it all impacts backwards to the point of I might get a ticket for cycling on the pavement. A difficult one to answer in one.
No, it is a very difficult one to answer. It is a nut that I am definitely not going to be able to crack on my own.
Don't expect it tonight, but it's a long-term solution.
Just to say a little bit of back history, the Neighbourhood Forum has worked very hard over the last couple of years to come up with solutions to the interminable problem of the fact that Petersham Road isn't safe, that it gets jammed up, that we need to get people out of their cars and onto bikes and out walking and using public transport. We have, as a forum, in particular, a woman called Justine Langford has led on this very much and has held public meetings about it, has had Sustrans come in and do a whole proposal for how to improve and create a 24/7 lit walking and cycling route that would go down through Ham, down along the towpath, and to make that happen. Unfortunately, we put in a bid for this, and we did a joint one with North Kingston Forum, and there are some amazing solutions to improving walking and cycling, to making it safer, creating school streets around so many streets, doing all of this. We put in the bid at the end of last year or beginning of this year, and then COVID happened, and TfL, who are providing the money in the past, now, as you know, is billions of pounds in debt and is about to stop functioning if they don't get more money. The council has no money for this, unfortunately. So we are back to square one again, which is we have these great ideas, we have the solution, but at the moment, there is no funding for it.
Where have Kingston got their funding from for the
They
magnificent
didn't.
cycleways? Where did that come from?
That was from the previous round back under Mayor Boris Johnson, which was purely for cycleways. And what this mayor is doing is being more of a what they call low traffic neighbourhoods or healthy streets, active travel, to try and make it less about cycling and more about creating better active travel and getting people out of buses up. We know there's a problem. It's something that comes up continuously. We know that there's an issue with there not being enough buses, that there's not being enough cycle routes. And believe you me, the three councillors and the forum have all and continue to push really, really hard. I will stop now because I'm taking
really
over.
because also my consideration, we hear a lot about cyclists on the pavement. They sort of end up being pushed on them. They seem to be criminals when they do it. But anybody who has tried to go along that Petersham Road, it is lethal.
Penny and I cycled along there yesterday. We know we saw the traffic, and both of us were like, that traffic, those traffic lights aren't meant to be there. We didn't know that work was going on. We get a list every week on Friday from the Roads and Highways Department telling us what road works are happening. Those works weren't on there. Those are emergency works that have gone in, and we cannot control. It'll be water, gas, one of them going, right, we need to do this work.
But they almost need to be told that they need to, it's the lack of coordination then with the traffic lights that are 100 yards further. Somebody needs to go down there and almost police it and say, turn those lights off. Something's got to go on, because if this is going to go on for a couple of weeks, we will be on the pavements with our bicycles and trying to share it, because it's the only way down there.
You did say that the Richmond Park was shut at night. It's not shut for bicycles.
Yeah, I know, but you can't ask 10 and 12-year-old kids to be cycling through there. It's pitch black. It's quite scary, and this is why long term there's an impact that comes back with them trying to get through areas that are dark, as that gentleman said earlier on. There's a lighting issue. We can make this work if we have shared paths where we all work together, as it has done near the British Museum with shared cars and walkways, and we all have a shared responsibility more for being on there, and we have to not have our headphones on when somebody's coming by, and it's a big shock when it's a bicycle. Maybe that is what we've got to consider, is doing more shared paths to help us get off this lethal road that is the Petersham.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I know it'll upset some people about us being on pavements, but I've had a child, he's now 14, and we've gone through all of this, and it's been scary. I've never actually been scared on a pathway, but I am in what is the most beautiful area of London. And it is scary to even then cycle along the river in the pitch black and by Ham House, and you don't know where the potholes are, and we've been thrown off the bikes. So it all stems back from, it's just been evident, the roadworks, and suddenly we're pushed off the road, and there we are, and it's downright lethal. And someone's going to get hurt, and you'll get sued a lot for potholes, and it's pitch black. And I don't want that, because I love you all. I love Richmond, and I love this area.
We love you too.
It's brilliant. Listen, we've had some friends who have just moved here from Plumstead to get their kids into the Russell School and into Greycourt, but one of them hasn't. He's had to go to Christ's, is on the list, and they've come from inner city Plumstead, and I can't tell you what a wonderful area this is, and to have this, he thinks is magnificent, but we've got to get it better. That's all.
To bring in Rebecca Robinson, is there not a concern for yourself and the other emergency services that Petersham Road is a total gridlock, and a police car or indeed an ambulance or a fire engine just could not get through if they needed to, because the traffic is blocked both ways?
Yes, yeah, again, listening to that, obviously that anything that blocks emergency services is obviously a concern. I think perhaps that's a conversation for us to have with the council outside of this meeting.
Because, as you know, the problem with Petersham Road is there is no alternative. If you're a bus, for example, I mean, there is if you're a cycle, but there's just no alternative.
Which is one reason why we're very much hoping that that the Richmond Park consultations will include keeping some through traffic between Kingston Gate, Ham Gate and Richmond Gate, because if we don't have that, I mean, I'm speaking for myself here because that I may not be speaking for other councillors, but I think it's really important that we do have that as a fallback when the poor old Petersham Road in all its fragility lets us down.
Well,
there's going to be a consultation. There's going to be a public meeting, isn't there, Andrea, to discuss the Richmond Park and its.
That's right. The forums are holding a public meeting on the 21st of October. I'm currently pulling together the Eventbrite link for it and to get it out there in the next couple of days, and so you can hear from Richmond Parks directly about what their plans are and why they're doing things.
So if people are interested in taking part in that, do keep in touch. So through Neighbourhood Forum.
Yeah, it'll be on the forums, probably on the on their Facebook page, but we'll send it out as emails. But I'll also put it up on Nextdoor and all the social media, and we'll try and get it out as widely as possible. It is meant to be aimed, obviously, at our ward and North Kingston. I don't really want it to go wider than that, but it may well do so. We'll have to try and rein things in a little bit if it gets a little bit too wide.
Well, look, it is 7:59 and you have answered the last question that we've been asked. So well done.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much to PCSO Alex Molnar and Neighbourhood Inspector Rebecca Robinson for giving up your evening to come and answer questions. Muted applause. Literally muted. And thank you everyone who's participated. I was told that there was this protocol that if you misbehaved and got too cross, we'd have to mute you and even exclude you. So everyone's been wonderfully polite, well behaved. Thank you everyone for taking part. And I wish you all a very good evening.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. I would just like to jump in and say a huge thank you to the Reverend Simon Coupland for chairing us so well.
Yeah, thank you.
And as Michael said, we love you all. Thank you very much for being here this evening. It was a really good event, and thank you for all your time and questions.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night. Thanks.